PTFS keeps updating, but we keep suggesting. Today we're gonna look at 20 of your PTFS suggestions that you guys put in the PTC Discord server and rate them on a scale of 1 to 10. So grab them Biscoffs and Stroopwafels. I'm MrBullsFan, and let's go to get started with the first suggestion by KK I Don't Know 1, which advocates for Naval Air Station Key West. With a history spanning from the establishment of the base in 1823, Key West has played a pivotal role in the US Navy's operations in the Caribbean. During the Great War, it became a seaplane base, and it was expanded during World War II for naval and aerial use. Today, aircraft like the FA-18 are operated by the Navy under the VFA-106 Squadron, with other commands like the VFC-11, Coast Guard, and US Army Special Forces are housed here too. On property, there's also a lot to like. The paved runways are set up in this tri-intersectional layout, which provide a new setup for the PTFS airport catalog. Massive parking and hangars are located northwest specifically for the US Navy, while search and rescue gets its own triangular section between runways 14 and 22. This would be different from the Coast Guard stations that we have right now, as it's only helicopter base and no boats. If we want to go into further detail, we can add these little lanes between the runways, small parking spots similar to RF's Campton, and for service members, basketball and tennis courts, and of course, lots of parking. The scenery should be also a priority as well. Located in the Florida Keys, you can incorporate the pristine waters and the vibrancy of the town nearby. Maybe a dry Tortugas Easter egg? Look, I'm getting carried away. It's gonna be the first perfect score of the day, a 10 out of 10. Our next suggestion involves turning down the lights. Okay, turn it back on, that'll be great. I across the board would like to see a night vision view for modern fighters as a fun feature for fighter roleplays. Right now I have the Sukhoi Su-57 flying across GR at night. You know, nothing special. So just like his suggestion, we're gonna have a on-off keybind that toggles night vision, somewhat like I have right here. Yeah, it's kind of giving me ominous vibes. But yeah, if you just integrate it into the blanket and be only activated when flying, it'll work as a charm. No, your suggestion ain't dumb, it's a simple suggestion, but let's just still give it a 9 out of 10. Gold Lambo 560 would like to see the Convair 880 in PTFS as it's very unique. Developed at the start of the golden age to compete with the 707 and DC-8, the fastest commercial airline at the time, well, flop. Good job, Convair. The aircraft showcased a slender, small frame with a basic tail design, with the wing holding the CJ805 engines, which are similar to the ones on the F4 Phantom by the way, allowed it to go 615 miles per hour and staying true to the moniker. Inside, there's a 2-3 seating layout for coach, and we could add parlor lounges with tables as a retro design for today's bars and game. Cockpit also has that ancient design with old indicators and a white yoke. If added, the Convair 880 would have liveries pertaining for that specific era, like the Boeing 727. Existing airlines like Cathay Pacific, Delta, Bliss, and even NASA can become retro, while newer liveries for the FAA, Japan Airlines, and TWA can be added to the game. The suggestion also called for Elvis's 880 named Lisa Marie, which I was actually lucky to visit at Graceland on show in 2021. It had a dinner table, retro TVs, and couch sofas inside, and would honestly be a neat private jet to operate. It was certainly a hound dog. Now, while compared to the highly suggested planes like the 707 and DC-8, it's not the most requested in prestige. However, for the time period which PTFS severely lacks in the airlines category, the golden age of aviation, it can slot in very nicely, which is why I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. Moving on to Cosmic Wallop, who wants a revamp of IPPH because it looks bad, lame, full of sadness, and not joyful. Isn't that harsh? So looking at the airport diagram we received in the suggestion, it's basically build, build, build. The current terminal will receive a concourse extension, and a smaller terminal 2 will be also built where the stands are bus only, and built both near the terminal and middle of the apron. That's not it though. Terminals 3 and 4, which operate Qantas flights, will be built where the current cargo stands are. All these terminals will be modernized with snazzy exteriors and interiors and transformed permanently to a new age, unlike this current one. The stands which were replaced with Terminal 2 would be relocated near runway 29 in its current form. It's a lot, yeah. I would argue it's a little too ambitious. Hear me out. I do think Perf needs a remodel. While I wouldn't say it's bad and lame, it's truly aging. And while we could take aspects from the current world version, we're not adding everything as implied. There was actually one suggestion I saw by Jules16296 that just added the concourse wings onto Terminal 1, which to be honest, works as well. I do give points because yeah, Perf does need a facelift, but not totally like this. 6 out of 10. Pro PvP says Air Choreo should be introduced, and there's no explanation why. So I'll explain why, cause look, I need my watch time. This is Air Choreo. the official airline of the Hermit Kingdom, and the world's only one-star airline. Is it though? And regardless, I do think the concept of adding an airline like this would be a headline grabber for PTFS. The problem though is where to apply delivery. As I'm making this video, the air courier fleet, mostly Soviet and Russian planes, aren't in PTFS yet. The ones that are in-game though, either military jets or in the case of the AN-225 and AN-22, have never been operated by the airline. Unless we add newer aircraft like the L-62 or the Tu-204, we're not getting air cargo as it stands. Sorry Kim, it's a 3 out of 10.
You promised we were gonna eat a cupcake!
Moving on to Flyer 4065, and you'd like to see the Canadair as part of a firefighting game pass. Now we'll talk about the money in a bit, but the Canadair CL-415 has aspects that I love. Built for water bombing and search and rescue, it was introduced in 1993, and today a total of 95 were built, and delivered to many air forces and fighting groups to use for flame combat. Design-wise, it is unique for sure. It acts as a seaplane, which would be an exciting new amphibious aircraft to add to our current list, with a thin fuselage, a massive middle stabilizer, and a unique high wing design showcasing two props and these things, I don't know what they're called. They all conglomerate to become a versatile asset in firefighting. Inside, massive water tanks would be used as storage, while in the cockpit, steering wheels as used for inputs with massive HD indicators built in. And just like the suggestion, the water replaced the flare feature with a similar particle to seaplanes taxiing. I don't know if we would actually create a whole new game pass for it, because we could just add it to the seaplane one. Up to orange, I guess. But otherwise, I'm kind of biased because, yeah, I do own my very own CL-415T, so it's gonna be a perfect 10. The dev team should add Istanbul Airport because it's the second busiest airport in Europe. This was suggested by It's Your Buddy, and, well, let me hold my rant for just a second. ISD opened in April of 2019 to replace the crowded Turk Airport, and it's an architectural achievement in the aviation industry. The terminal exteriors are extremely futuristic, and inside, its gargantuan size is featured in the duty-free head house. Like, look at this. This is actually crazy. 5 concourses expand out from the main grouping area, which would certainly build on the ever-unique design never seen in PTFS, along with a massive cargo terminal and VIP area for state dignitaries to utilize on the southern end of the airport. The 5 long runways are all set up parallel to each other, with the main terminal and cargo areas squeezed in between them. And yes, I do understand why people want this airport. It's one of the most popular international jet ports in the world, and its design captivates. But in my mind, it's super unrealistic for PTFS. The maximum amount of runways in game is right now 3 at Greater Rockford, or if bar exists. 4 is pushing it, sure, but 5 is kinda overkill. Massive international airports aren't realistic as of now because of the makeup of the airport list. But what about we downsize it? You could, but the main pull is that the terminal interiors and mass size, which, while possible, just look at the current interiors right now. For real, PTFS isn't made to dazzle for the interiors if most of your time is actually in the sky. Let's go 3 out of 10. Next is Bear Eat Apple, saying that there should be a UI option for the aircraft to notify Coast Guard of their emergency ditching. Let's say someone sold their A320 into a river and needs some saving. By clicking a button, it would send a message to Coast Guard with their location on the map. And this would be a really good add in my opinion, because the rescue experience just becomes less nonsense. Like, to be honest, I don't want people screaming in the chat, "Help, help, save me." For those who just want to cut the fluff and just want to save people from the dumb find mistakes, that choice should be given. It's a minor thing for sure, but I'm gonna give it an 8 out of 10 because I do agree with the resentment here. What about the Boeing 7J7 as suggested by AJ Car Studio? And with that like to dislike ratio, yeah. Here, let me start off with a question for you guys. Have you heard of the Boeing 7J7? No? Because I'm 99% sure you have not, because it never flew. It was a concept by Boeing during the 80s and 90s to replace the 727, and its design was ubiquitous. I mean, look at the engines. It has a Piaggio Avanti look, but on a commercial airliner. While it got interest from airlines like Americano and SAS, it was ultimately cancelled in 1988. I don't really think Orange would build a plane that ultimately never flew. Well, except the Walrus or their creation of the UFO, which are basically joke ads. I'm just saying that PTFS is trying to create a catalog of real life. Heck, if you're even gonna question your own suggestion, I think we're going nowhere. It's a 2 out of 10. Let's review Ivert 10002 suggestion of a remodel HMS Queen Elizabeth, shall we? And I'm not gonna go ahead and do a complete overhaul, but I just want to add one thing: the spawn areas. If you look at the side of the carrier, it's very empty. In real life though, it would be part of an elevator to transfer planes in and out of the indoor hangars. Hear me out. You can use the space under the carrier to build an interior where you can spawn planes. Then you can go ahead and go to one of the 2 ramps where you would freeze the plane somewhat similar to the catapult with a keybind, and you'll be lifted by an animated ramp or vice versa. I took this from Blue28's suggestion, so props to him, but I do think the HMS does need some update, and this would honestly be it. It would be really wise for Orange and Sam to make the HMS more neck and neck with the USS. Let's make this elevator feature a pull factor for players, and that's why I'm giving it a 10 out of 10. OG Nightingale wants the Saud Hawks as another T1 display team livery, and that's a beauty indeed. Created in 1998 by the Royal Saudi Air Force, the Saudi Falcons has entertained the Saudis and Afghans alike with their bold green trainers and trickery in disguise. Again, it's quite pretty. I mean, the livery's clean with that iconic base color and cream striping on the wings and the tail. And for the smoke colors, we would also have red, white, and of course green. The plus is we don't have to replace the Model 2, so it is a plus overall. I know there's a lot of people inside of PTFS who love display teams. I've been to some demonstrations in-game myself, and the niche fan base is extremely passionate. Adding the Saud Hawks, or for that matter, any other display team, would rile up the group. The only query I have is this: would it be a whole different game pass, or are we just gonna lump in the red arrows with a Hawk T1 display combo? Not my problem. Let's just hand my 10 out of 10. Oh, here's a random guy. My bad, that's his name. Anyways, he wants the YF-23 Black Widow, as it's much better than the F-22. Okay? Designed to replace the F-15, the YF-23 was built in a manufacturing competition during the 1980s. It has a stuffy fuselage with a ghostly nose, triangle wings, and 2 tails. The engines are also quite intriguing too, with the undercarriage intake and this weird square exhaust pipe. All these features culminate to have it fly at Mach 2.2 or around 1,450 miles per hour. Now granted, I would be 100% open to the stealth flight with this information alone, but unfortunately, it just never got off the ground. Despite prototypes were built, the United States Air Force opted for another plane, one that you might be familiar with. Remember that competition? Well, the YF-23 lost to the eventual F-22. What could have been? It just hurts me and pains me to say this, but we were just given the wrong deck. 1 out of 10. Invented Bo said Orange should model Newquay Airport as it's the first spaceport in the UK and will be a nice little airport for PTFS. So I believe NQY has 3 aspects that I would like to talk about that could warrant an addition. Let's go ahead and start off with the commercial side. Located on the northwestern side of the property, it has a neighborhood-esque interior and inside small coffee shops and benches. It isn't really necessarily flashy, but it does have character. Think South Matoma vibes here. There's also one big hangar and a basic 9,000-foot runway that runs right through the middle of the property. Then there's the military aspect with RAF St. Mulgan being located opposite of the terminal. Open since World War II, its main use over the years was for maritime operations for both the RAF and the United States Navy. However, once the Navy shuttered its operations, St. Mulgan shrunk to its current form, where today, hangars dotted around and apron parking spots here and there, but nothing really special. Finally, there's the spaceport aspect, which with the shuttle update, it can be a massive pull. Spaceport Cornwall was a base for Virgin Orbit and uses 747 and its wings to launch rockets into space. Well, until I went bankrupt, but anyway, it is an intriguing consideration. Right now, there isn't an airport in PTFS that is designed for dual use, and especially not triple use. And while the airport isn't revolutionary, and with the RAF base there, and I guess the spaceport being a little gem within the update, if you just get all of it together, hey, it's a 9 out of 10. Model the aliens and flaps so they move with the input of a player's cursor. This comes from Can't Resist, and it would be an interesting get. So I think a good model that I can example is other flight sims on Roblox, Flightline and Project Flight especially. As I'm approaching, you can clearly see very closely that whatever input I do coincides with the wing mechanics adjusting for such control. It's meant to recreate the actual physics from real life, and if added to PTFS, it would make the game seem more in tune with visual physics in flight and create a sense sense of realism. Yes, I know we have flash, but obviously in this visual, basic capacity. There's a reason for this design, however, because Orange does want the parts in game to stay as optimized as possible. And let's think about it, animated ailerons and flaps are not simple contraptions, and when we are trying to reduce parts within the map, it can end poorly for those with weak devices. They work constantly, continuously, non-stop during flight, so you can see some kind of conflict. This addition would be a plus if the objectives were lined up, so it's 5 out of 10. Alright, what about damage ink suggestion of a UFO model? So first, let me talk to design. Instead of this cartoony look right now, he's looking at a featureless disc to make it more realistic. I don't know where this realistic comes from, because have you seen a UFO before? Does it really exist, or does it not? This totally is not gonna age like milk, isn't it? Look, I'm not a huge fan of it, just looks kinda bland, but what do I know? And then the physics, which we should throw everything out of the window, because the UFO should be able to accelerate and decelerate at an extreme pace than what PTFS can actually offer. Maximum speed should be around like 2,000 knots rather than the current 300. Now this is because the UFO is utilizing the helicopter blanket right now, and yeah, it's not the greatest. I am in agreement because I do think the UFO should be able to travel at light speed to go through dark matter and stuff. It should not be traveling at a downward slope. I really don't know if there would be a new plane kit just for the UFO specifically, because I just see it unlikely just for one aircraft, but you know what? As long as my friend Willie the Walrus is faster, I'll be content. That's my take. It's a 7 out of 10.
Can we actually get a plane that we desperately need to remodel?
What about the B29?
That's a Quash, one of my video helpers. He's kinda a big Fifi stan.
B29 remodel, please.
Fine, take it away.
Miguel PX has suggested an entire remodel of the B29 and paying homage with an Enola Gay livery. So the B29 is very outdated, from the sharp line fuselage to the botched nose, and inside, no interior and 2D cockpit. It's baffling and wild that Orange doesn't consider it as one of the planes to remodel. Now granted that the entire CSG frame is being updated to 2024 standards, here's what I would add. To head inside the plane, there would be an animated door behind the front gear that would lead into the cockpit. Hopefully 3D modeled by then. Maybe add that middle seat in the nose for the bomb operator, to do stuff. Because the V-29 is also the first pressurized bomber, there would be a long tunnel to the rear end of the cabin where the tail gunner would sit. Right now, nada. And honestly, it's a current theme at the moment. Nobody's mending the turrets. Let's change that, shall we? I think you would have to make the B-29 model bigger to fit all this, but all of these features would make the World War II bomber feel rejuvenized. And then the liveries, we keep that Fifi, but there's Big Stink, Command Decision, and Doc as well. Miguel said the iconic Enola Gay should be added too, and I wholeheartedly agree. So Bulls, what would you rate it?
Let's go 10 out of 10.
Yes.
Pakovisky explains that Ubleni Aerodrome should be added to PTFS because of the AN225 Burian correlation. More out-of-world suggestions, am I right? Don't berate me, please. Built in 1982 in current-day Kazakhstan for the Buran project, it was used for both Soviet and Russian space programs. For example, these VMT planes, which are hella ugly by the way, deliver parts for Buran from Moscow. Today, especially since the fall of the Soviet Union, the aerodrome has fallen into disarray. How about we just play into that broken down vibe here and just make it like the UFO testing airfield. Just think we're flying over some empty space and you see this airport with this massive overground runway with little apron space. PTFS Flure would go, wow, it just isn't an exciting suggestion in my opinion, but if we can go ahead and just contour it to this secret former space base, it could work. I'm doing 7 out of 10. Next we gotta cruise down the I-95 to Washington. With Mitchell T202 suggestion of adding the people mover shuttles, as it'll be good for roleplay and would be a cool feature. And if you don't know what these people movers are, the best way I can explain them is if a bus and a jet bridge have offspring. Yeah. So you would have the people mover connected to the terminal, have passengers hop on, and it will drive itself across the apron to a remote stand. It would link up to the door level of the plane, and passengers would board it accordingly. If this becomes a ground crew vehicle, and you're able to build compatibility with either new or existing airports in game with these stubby gates, it would be a unique addition to airline roleplay. If we want, we can go ahead and take the seats from the terminal bus and use the catering truck's vertical movement to actually make this a reality. It's unorthodox, man, and I know I'm basically sugarcoating it, but I love it. 10 out of 10. Say lift wants to see his favorite helicopter, the CH-53E Super Stallion, and it would be great for military roleplay too. It was built by request for the US Marines in the 1970s. The CH-53E, which was based off the older CH-53 Sea Stallion, was born for minesweeping and aircraft airlift. Its toughness has remained true to this day, with the Marines and Navy operating it, with the Japan's Maritime Self-Defense Force in it too, all which can actually become possible liveries. Again, it's beefy. With massive 7 and 4 rotor propellers on the top and tail respectively, it powers through in high strength activities like this or this. The heli also sees massive fuel sponsons on the side, unique engines on the top, and cosmetic machine guns on the side. Some variants would also have differing details too. The Navy MH-53 version having access to the Finch, while the Marine CH-53 with the spike up front. There would be 2 doors like the Sikorsky S-92, one in the front and rear sides. The cockpit would play host to massive digital screens divided by a massive console between pilots where joysticks and switches galore. In the back, there could be some seating for troops or Coast Guard configuration, I'm not really sure, but we do need more helicopters in game, and as one as massive as the Sikorsky CH-53E Sea Stallion, and unique as well, would actually work for PTFS. 9 out of 10. And finally, our last suggestion comes from Prisits with no. So yeah, that's 20 PTF suggestions rated and explained. I'm MrBullsFan, and as always, take flight. See ya!